Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for watching the short video at the beginning, and thank you, Yan, for sharing your thoughts with us. Actually, I was going to mention one of the quotes mentioned in the video. To overcome a big mountain, you must overcome the little or the molehills in your mind first. And that quote I've just actually seen in a mountain museum, which I visited in Dolomites Mountains in Italy last month. And that was my first major hiking trip after the pandemic. And I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the area because it was a very secluded area, far away from all the world's problems. And I really felt like I found peace there. But after coming back to London, I sensed like there was a sense of depression again with all the bad news flying from social media everywhere. And it sometimes feels frustrating because I can sense that how I feel is actually dependent on the external environment and not fully controlled by myself. I wonder if any of you shares the same frustration here. But then that's why I am so grateful and very honored to say I came across this book that we're talking about today, Ren, the Ancient Chinese Art of Finding Peace and Fulfillment. I feel like every day, to those who don't know yet, Ren is also often translated as benevolence or kindness, is the core of the Confucius teaching, and it's probably not also the base or the root of a very important root of the traditional Chinese culture. So every day when I commute, I read a few pages of this book. I really felt somehow it took me onto a journey to explore within myself. And somehow it cleanses me and it recharges me mentally. While I had the honor to share my feelings with the author, Yan Wei, she told me that she had a similar journey while she researched and wrote the book. So today I had a very honor to introduce to you Yan Wei, the author of this book, Ren, the Ancient Chinese Art of Finding Peace and Fulfillment. Welcome, Yan. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Vivian, and thanks for being so open about how you felt about the book. And I'm really, really glad that the book gave you, some moments of peace and fulfillment, as it says in the title, but also some moments where you could be more aware of yourself and hopefully start this journey to take a bit more control, I guess, of our own lives.
I definitely would say for the whole month when I was reading the book, it was a very important part of my daily life.
Oh wow!
It kind of makes my day.
I'm really honored to hear that. And I mean, even if it reaches just one person, I think it makes me feel like the book means something, and then it makes me grateful for obviously Wellbeck, the publishers, to allow me to have this journey in creating this book. And just to give everyone a little bit of background, I'm a writer and a researcher, and I'm currently doing a PhD on Chinese science fiction. And it was because of the research actually that got me onto this book, because in my research, I look at a lot of Chinese science fiction that's available now. And for criticism and for analysis, I go back to a lot of the ancient teachings of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. And that's, in order for us to understand perhaps a little bit more about what Chineseness means, or what the East and Southeast Asian heritage means, and how that's reflected in sort of comparative literature or in readings. And my passion genre is science fiction, so that's how I ended up there. But when I started my PhD in 2016, I went to Guanghua Bookshop and met Vivian for the first time.
You talked a lot about science fiction.
I talked a lot about science fiction,
Yeah.
And it was during that trip that I went in and I found a lot of really good books on the Confucius Analects. And I bought, I think it was 2 different versions from Guanghua, and they are the basis or the beginnings of the research that I have been doing into Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, and that was what kicked off this book in essence. So during the pandemic, a lot happened in my life. Just so in the UK, we locked down in March 2020. 2020 was actually a very good year for me. It's a really hard thing to say because so many people suffered through the pandemic. But 2020 started for me with a great opening, because in January, I signed with Abbey Fellows as my literary agent from the Good Literary Agency. And Abby is fantastic. She understands what I do with my literature, and whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And she has been really supportive in the way I develop my work. That when we got together, I didn't actually have any ideas of a project that she could sell, or that we could continue. But she took me on nonetheless, and she believed in the work that I did. So much so that when we all got locked down in March, Abby and I continued having more conversations. And it was in April when we started to think about the idea of maybe writing a mindfulness book. And it was from sort of April, May, and then June, like the rest of the year just kept rolling by with more and more bad news. I had lots of news of death, whether it was COVID specific or whether it was COVID influenced, to depression, to breakdowns and stuff. There were a lot of news of death around me. And it was really hard to cope being 24/7 in a small apartment with just my husband and my child, who was very, very young at that time. And also trying to keep positive because you want your child to have a good, experience of it. And when Abby and I started talking about the possibility of writing this book, it became clear that I really wanted to write it. And also it became clear that actually Confucius has a lot to give us that we have forgotten. And I say we collectively as everyone in the last 2000 years, because Confucius he was very important at a point, like over 2000 years ago. But what was amazing for me was I was slightly apprehensive in the beginning, because obviously the time when he was alive, the world was very, very different. So, how much of this is applicable, whether I take comfort in his quotes doesn't mean it can be translated into a mindfulness book, obviously. So there's a lot of things that I had to work through. But in the end, I was very surprised, and I felt that it was really precious, actually, that he translated perfectly, especially in terms of Ren, into what we have today. And in some ways, it was comforting to know that as much as we change, the environments around us change so much, the core of humanity doesn't. We still want to be ethical, we still want to be good, we still want to be kind, and we want to be all that to ourselves as well. And so while I was working through a lot of the difficulties of the pandemic, I'm very, very grateful that I had this project to work with, where I could apply all the things that I've written in this book to real life, to actually doing it for myself, and to seeing how difficult it was, or what the outcomes were, and knowing actually that this is a non-stop thing. Ren is a journey that It's something that you say, okay, I will get onto it, but there's no end. We can't be perfect people, but we'll just keep trying to be Ren, basically. And yeah, that was how this book was born. And we were really, really lucky to have Welbeck come on board and say, great, do this. And actually, as much as it helped me, we thought it would help a lot of people during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic. Yeah.
Thank you, Yan. It's so touching to hear that you actually used the writing process as a healing process or as a therapy to help you through a very difficult time. And this is how I felt when I'm reading the book, therapeutic. You know, we talked a lot about Ren, and I believe this is a term that most Chinese people are, or those from the Chinese community, are very familiar with. But we also have some local people who may have not been fully familiar with the term. Can you explain Ren a little further to us? And can you tell us, do you think that if we have understood the Ren fully in the West and in the East?
I can tell you that we have not understood it fully because, to be honest, I don't think it's possible to understand it fully to start with. It's a really complex word to begin with, because to explain what Ren is, if we look at the Chinese character for it, I don't know if you can see it here. It's Ren Zi Bahang. You know, on the left, you've got the character. I'm going to see if I can find the picture inside. So on the left of the word is the character of a person, Ren. And on the right, you see the two horizontal strokes. That is the character or two lines in Chinese character. When you interpret,
I've typed the character in the chat box for those who have a look. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so on the left of the character, you see the two strokes that are standing upright. That is that represents person. And on the right, you see the two horizontal strokes that represents the number 2. Yeah. And in Chinese writing, and I'm not a scholar in this area, but I understand that when you have these combinations, it creates the meaning of the word. And because the word has been around for so long, it carries a lot of meaning within it. In a very, very simple term, we can interpret it as the connection between two people. So you have number 2 and just people. So you've got the connection between two people. If you want to go slightly more in depth, you can interpret the 2 lines as heaven and earth. So everything in the world with us that encompasses the heaven and earth. And with the person on the left, it means our relationship, people or humanity's relationship with the world around us. It becomes a really complicated term, but as Vivian said earlier, in English, it has been translated to benevolent or even humane. Some use sort of kindness as a thing. But I actually see it as being human or humankind, or the overall sort of human love, because I see that character to represent what we want to be as good people on the earth that we live on, and how we can create that with the relationship either between people or the relationship with people and the world around us. So Ren is a very, very deep thing, and it can begin with people, but it can also go outwards to nature, to the buildings, to the heavens, the earth, and however you want to see it is the relationship that we have with everything around us, basically. Yeah. I don't really think, as I said, I don't think, whether we're brought up with some of the ideas of it in the East, or whether we learn about it in the West. I don't think any of us have a good grasp of everything that Confucius wanted us to know. Is a really, really difficult terminology. But in the East, in Southeast Asia, some people might get to study it in schools a little bit. or some of us grew up, like I grew up in Malaysia, and we were taught it either not directly, but we were taught a lot of the values, that was handed down either through parents or grandparents telling us to do certain things. Sometimes they would say, oh, that's from Confucius. Sometimes they won't. And you don't really know which part of it is Confucius or which part of it isn't, but it's so embedded in the culture that you just take it for granted a lot of the times. And when I started learning or researching into Confucius and into the Analects, I realized how much of it was actually passed down by my parents, grandparents, and my ancestors. But I also realized that a lot of it is slightly distorted because it's passed down verbally. So, people would change through their own interpretation, how they want to apply these ideas or these values. In the same way, in the West, you get a lot of researchers who deep dive into Confucianism, and the interpretation they have are very different from someone who grew up with it. And they would come perhaps with a more subjective, mentality for it. But neither is right, neither is wrong. It's just how we perceive, the quotes that Confucius have provokingly left us. As we said in the beginning, his quotes are out there to make you think. So if you're thinking, then you got it right. And what I hope with this book specifically is that it is interpreted for the modern life that we live in, and that we can apply it to simplify our lives and have a sort of aspiration as we grow, to be ren, to be more humane, more benevolent, more kind, to be better people. Yeah.
I really think one of the most amazing part of this book is you're really constantly thinking about how to make Ren practical and how to apply Ren to our daily lives. And the book is also very easy to read. It's like some sort of a life manual, and the structure is very clear. For example, the first part is to explain Ren and the theory. Then the second is to talk about Ren and ourselves. And I found that this part is very interesting, because we all thought we knew ourselves very well. The people who knew ourselves must be ourselves, right? But why do we still need to raise the self-awareness?
I don't think we know ourselves very well. A lot of what we do, we are very unaware of, because it becomes second nature. I mean, this is the term that is used in English a lot, or it becomes a reaction. And a lot of times we don't spend enough time just sitting back and looking at an event, or looking at a reaction that we've had, or looking at something we did, to kind of truly understand why either it went well or it didn't go well. Especially when things go well, we don't question it. And one of the reasons for this is physically, actually. I wasn't planning to go into this, but this is a little bit of research that I found out when I was looking into the creation of habits. As we grow up, babies can't hold spoons and feed themselves, but they learn it through motor practices, right? So you reach out your hand, you take the spoon, you put it in your mouth, and you'll miss the first few times, and they keep doing it for, say, a year, and then they do it really, really well after that. And that's how we learn to do things throughout our lives. In the beginning, what happens is your brain has to concentrate on every minute detail of your movement. The hand needs to go and reach the spoon. It needs to grasp the end of the spoon. It needs to hold it really well. It needs to scoop the food, pull it towards you, aim for the mouth, put it in. And every minute movement is thought through in the head. And as we practice, less and less things get thought of, until we become adults, where you're eating without thinking, right? Your brain doesn't have to go through every small muscle movement anymore. It just needs to say eat, and then you scoop food and put it in your mouth. And that's so that we don't, in sort of computer terms, we don't fry the computer. We don't overuse the computer. Because imagine if you are going to think about every minor movement in your whole life, you don't have space to think about anything else. And mindfulness actually is something that tries to reverse this a little bit and to bring us back to thinking about the things that we stopped thinking about. And just like our reactions, where if someone came up to me and, I don't know, insulted me, perhaps my reaction would be to shout back, right? But that is a reaction that I've learned through the years to immediately do. Perhaps that's not the best reaction to have, and perhaps that's not the ideal reaction for myself, not even for the other person, for myself, right? But because it has become this habit, we don't think about it. We short circuit it, and we don't think of, okay, the input is an insult. Let's process what it is. Why am I reacting? What's so hard about it? And how do I want to react? Do I want to correct them? Do I want to walk away? We don't have time for all those processes. Our beings just kind of go, okay, react, let's do it. So mindfulness is actually just a practice to try and take us back into rewriting some bad habits, or opening up these ideas so that we can start understanding why we react the way we react, or why we act the way we act. Whether it's just eating, if imagine someone said to you, you're eating, the way you eat is wrong. You need to change it. It will be really difficult. It's like you have to hold chopsticks in your left hand, on your other hand, to learn that. It's going to take a really long time for our muscles to get used to, but also for our brain to change it. So we're doing that same thing, but with our mental health, with our emotions, with actually just ourselves, to just know more about our own selves.
Yeah, and do you mind if I butt in to say something on this?
Go for it.
I was getting excited listening to you talk. So I was going to say, it's a lot of our daily lives that we can look into quotations as a reminder. I'm just going to fall back because I run, and this now Vivian is just showing a quotation for every 1,000 miles. It takes the journey of 1,000 miles. You take the first step. I'm just going to apply this to our journey in creating the Malaysia Women Marathon right now, and running it as an activity as well. So I went into running, I think 10 years ago. So I would have clocked in more than 1,000 miles by now. It's been 13 years. But, creating a brand, it takes a lot of the assurance to yourself. And sometimes quotations just come into play. People who have been philosophers long time ago, they would have gone through practically everything to know about human weaknesses. In a times where they need to feel that motivation, that the quotations itself will remind you as a person, what is your journey in the work you want to do? How do you want to achieve it? As much as you want to create this semblance of a good humanity. Everyone needs to have a benefits from everything. So, we apply it to the Malaysia Women Marathon because we want women empowerment. So there's also a particular factor. We see women not coming up to a certain level. So we use, we create events, or we create people coming together, and acknowledging that there's certain reminders, or a certain level where women needs to come up to, be a part of leadership, perhaps, and then all of this just applies basically to our daily lives. And it's how we use these words to change our lifestyle, as Yan was saying, and everything goes for a benefit for everybody. I'm so glad I saw the creation, the quotations with Vivian saying, for every journey, what was it again? For every 1,000 miles,
for every
you take
1,000
one
miles,
step.
you start with
so
the
I
first
put
step.
on my shoe and I took that one step and started running.
Exactly.
You know,
but I'm not a marathon runner, but I definitely 100% agree with you.
Okay, when I come to London, I'll see you then.
Running is and a lot of other sports as well. It's a very mindfulness process, because all you can do is, and all you can focus is right now, your action right now, and then eventually with that kind of a focus and a mindfulness, you achieve a big deal. So that's amazing.
And I was actually referring to Yan's book, and it's very applicable in the sense that when she's written her book to be based on how our co-relationship with friends at work, with if you're doing some projects. So these are the things that I think, Yan, what you did was quite interesting, because you based it on
so real life,
something that you can show people. These are the common factors or the common things that we don't realize it. We, as you say, sometimes we need to sit back and reapply and evaluate it ourselves, and then sometimes books help us do that. So it's great fun reading your book, because
thank you.
Along the way, because if you don't care to reinvest times in reading, then you fail to move forward as well. So sometimes reading people's thoughts are also good. Some great fun reading.
Thank you. Well, and bringing it back to Confucius, Confucius reminds us that when we have spare time, turn to culture, because culture is where we learn to appreciate diversity. We learn to broaden our knowledge, and we learn to actually take in new things that other people do that we don't do. And so for him, he always talked about poetry, but that's because 2,000 years ago they didn't have a crazy publishing industry like we do today. And I'm sure Vivian knows too much about the publishing industry and book selling. But I think we really should take heart to what Confucius says about creativity and culture, and that becomes the building blocks of society, of what we see today. And it's not to go out and just re-energize what but it's actually to go out and explore things that you've never come across before.
Exactly. Vivian, can I ask Yan a really crazy question? Since I'm always about women empowerment, I'm just going to ask, since you did a lot of research on Confucius, do you think at his time he would have had in his mind some gender equality, or woman, he would have leveled up women to men's status at that time? Would you think he did that?
To be honest, I think it's a really difficult thing, because he was in an environment that didn't allow that kind of thinking. Right? So we have to accept the fact that where he was socio-politically and all that is already a patriarchal setup.
Yes, that's right.
But for Confucius, he saw a lot of roles, very specific roles. And the way he divided, actually in my book, I use guardian or parent role, but Confucius uses mother and father separately, which I don't like, because it doesn't apply to our modern role today. But in his eyes, what comes across is that though they're different roles, they're equal roles. They're not like the women's not earning money, therefore lower down, or that kind of stuff. They're equal roles in how it determines the lives of the new generation. They're equal in terms of
the roles they play in society. Actually, I see
exactly.
That.
So back then, I think it was a lot nicer in terms of the gender issues. Even though it was separate, it was still equal, and they were respected both ways. And it's the creation of the last 2,000 years of like capitalism and sociopolitics that have kind of moved things in the wrong direction.
Especially capitalism. I agree with you.
Yeah, there is actually a lot of new research coming out, especially in science fiction. I've come across on Confucianism and feminism, and it actually goes into depth on how Confucius sees women during the time and how that can be reinterpreted. But what is very clear is that because Confucius was very against things like cliques or biasness, the equality was always inherent in his teaching. Whether his society showed that, I don't think so. But also remember that he wasn't very popular when he was alive. You know, it was only after he passed on.
He would have been, you know, he would have actually been one of those who was always about compromise. So I'm sure that balance.
A balance was more
important. If they were a society of yin and yang, they would have thought of something that's in the middle path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that is more about being open and being supportive to each other than the idea of like excluding. He specifically says that exclusion is bad, you know, so there's so much of his teachings that are diversity related that I think
so it's very applicable to, you know, what's happening, even United Nations talking about, you know, sustainable development goals, and you know, you can see some elements of, you know, all the old philosophers. I'm sure if you read other philosophers, these are like, you know, traits of humanity that we have to remind ourselves. It's always written in the book, and it's good because you know, you did your research, you put it in writing so that it reminds us, okay, this part, if you've done this, then it relates back to where Confucius told us to do, you know. So it's like, we need more books written like that.
Sometimes it's surprising to see how these ancient philosophers can be so forward-thinking as well. Actually, since Karen has like really contributed to this topic about like being the runner and using the mindfulness to achieve, I found one little chapter in the book very interesting. Page 84 is like
okay, I'm going to take the book now. Page 84. Okay.
For those who already have the book, there is a Confucius quote that Yan used here. Would you mind reading it for us, Yan?
Sure. It says, "Do not worry about being unappreciated. Rather, aspire to be worthy of appreciation."
For those who read Chinese, I'll read out the original quote. So, 子曰：不患无位，患所以立；不患莫己知，求为可知也。 So it's aspire, not desire. So it looks like both are ways to achieve things. Like we all want things done. We all want achievement. So what's the difference? Aspiration and desire.
For me specifically, one is to do with yourself, and the other one involves other people. Okay, so aspirations are what we built up within ourselves, and desires are things that we want, which involves other people doing something. So I could, for example, desire for all of you to go out and buy the books, but that is you. I can't control you. I mean, I can influence you as much as I want to, but that desire is actually really harmful for me, because I will now, if that is ultimately what I desire, then I will just be bogged down by continuously thinking, oh, are you going to buy that book? Are you going to buy that book? You know, and it has nothing to do with me, and I have no control of it, right? So instead, I can aspire to write a good book that people want to buy, you know, or I can aspire to talk about things that are important that people want to engage with me, right? And it's a lot healthier because I can then control my aspirations to how I grow, how I learn, how I build myself up. And I do not need to have any assumptions or expectations from other people. And purely because we cannot control people, and we shouldn't control people, I think is the most important thing. We're all so different, and we can never understand what each other is thinking. We cannot, even influencing other people, I am not totally comfortable with, but that's what marketing is, and that's what promotion is. But to a certain extent, we can tell people about the stuff we do, but we cannot force them or make them go into this. And that's how I see sort of aspire versus desire. Is there something you desire, Vivian?
Desire. Oh, I have to think about it.
You know what I want to desire for you ladies? I always want to see if anything in all industries, there will be 50% parity for women in the industry. That's always has been my, greatest, because I've done this work for women equality for 10 years, and we're still seeing lacking of women reaching that parity. And then, especially in Malaysia, where it's from 30% of women in politics and leadership, it's slided down to 20%. It's not moving forward, and something is not quite right. I mean, most of my, work that we do, a lot of women go out, although they're not appreciated in this sense of your context. Do not worry about being unappreciated. They definitely do the work, and they don't feel the need to be appreciated, because they go out and do the work for women to be passed on to the next generation of women. So then in that way, in that sense, when the next generation women see the work it's done, it's the work,
it normalizes it.
And the woman themselves does not need to voice out, hey, I did this for you guys, I did this for you ladies, but they can feel the sense of being worthy of that appreciation. So the work that I do, I don't have to voice out and say and be idolized or anything. I don't want that as well. But if I see somebody picking up running and saying, okay, this is going to give me that self-esteem, this is going to give me that, aspiration to inspire, then it goes on. It's just a good continuation. And that's how basically it is a lot of our daily lives. If we do something, it is continuation of it, and we don't have to really need to feel appreciation, but at least we know we are worthy of the appreciation. It's wonderfully said, actually. It's wonderfully said, very nicely said. Chinese writing can be really profound. I don't read Chinese though. I need you guys to.
Amazing. I'm sure you're inspiration to lots of other women. And I wonder if any of us here, any of the audience here.
Maybe you should ask the guys to speak up.
Any of the audience here, do you have anything that you desire, you want to achieve?
And I mean, even if you don't want to, you can share with us if you like, unmute and share, or type in the chat, feel free.
Wenjun, do you have anything to say?
I just want to say desire, yes. I think in terms of parenting, I think we'll have a lot of desire. So we want our, we know a lot of things which is good to children. So we want them to do like a lot of courses. We want them to learn the music. We want them to learn painting, a lot of things. But children always say no to us. So when that happens, the parents will sometimes become disappointed, or they sometimes become angry with their kids. So I think these are kind of very desire. I think I always have to
How old is your child, Wenjun?
One is 11, the other one is 9. Yes.
Yeah, slightly older than mine, and slightly younger than Karen's. Slightly older than Vivian's.
Okay. Yes, and also myself, actually, I'm learning Confucian. I actually practice Confucian.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so before I start learning Confucian, I never realized it's something that we can apply in daily life. because I follow this teacher. He's based in China, in Beijing. He teaches us how to apply it. After I studied, that's something, I mean, in ancient terms, we call it the 心性功夫. So actually the Confucian actually does that with himself and all his students, his followers. So he teaches people how to do it. So when I started doing it, I found it is, like you said, it's very helpful. It helps to run our daily life smoothly. Yes, because when you just mentioned, you say about the spoon feeding, you use this spoon feeding example to describe. Yes, that's something. I just think of that's a term that's called a 习气. So
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so everybody has this 习气, like a habit.
Yeah.
So we get used to it through when we grow up. It becomes like our second nature, but sometimes these are not correct way to do. Like
or not helpful.
I'll be very angry with my children, if they don't listen to me. But it's not right. When you are angry to them, you actually put them into this situation that they will be more rebellious to you. So but then I realized, if I calm down myself, if I say to them in a gentle way, they tend to listen to me. So that's how I learned. So whenever I'm angry, I actually I will revert my focus back to myself. So I just calm down.
That is brilliant.
So it's very useful. So I just think if everybody knows the Confucianism, they start applying the Confucian idea into their daily life, it will help us to have a very happy and, what do you say, smooth life. Or
I think content is the word that I would use, and also the aim that I want for myself. In some ways, happiness is overplayed. The term happiness has too much weighing on it. People want to be happy all the time, but there's something about being content. Like when you have a regular day and everything goes smoothly, and you just are able to reflect back and go, yeah, it was a good day because it all went well. There was no ups, no downs, and that's good enough. Whereas there is so much drama that we place on the idea of happiness, because as a writer, as a fiction writer, one of the first things you learn, or a lot of writers learn, is if you want to make your reader happy, you have to make them sad first, right? So for us to experience happiness, we have to go the other way. And that's not good for our lives, to constantly go up and down. That's actually really unhealthy, if anything. So, that whole idea of being able to just contextualize how our lives are, happening in a daily routine, and that slowly is going somewhere in a direction that we aspire to be. And that when we get there, we acknowledge, okay, we've done it. Like even writing a book is actually a very anticlimactic thing, seeing a book get published, because the climax is when you finish writing the last word and you send it off. The climax isn't holding the book in your hand. And when you get the book in your hand, like my agent and my publisher were all like, go open the champagne, enjoy. And I'm like, no, my head is in the next project. I can't, I'm already working on the next thing. But that journey of getting there, I think, is so important for us to remember, to just go, do you know what? The day when I sat down and I wrote 3,000 words and I was really happy with that, that was a good day. That's for me is, like a really useful thing. And just to come back to what you said about your desire for your children. I think, I mean, you've got more experience parenting than I do, so I'm not going to teach you how to parent. But one thing I find that is really useful in the way Confucius explains things is that, you know, like the leader who is honest will always have honest people. You know, the way he says, you become the one that shows the people who are following you how to be, right? And I would say, if you say want your children to appreciate more music, do it yourself. Go out and enjoy the music and show them that you do it. We're really lucky because in our household, both my husband and I are musicians. So we're able to not put the pressure on the child to go for lessons, but like I play for an orchestra, she's come and attended with me. And my husband plays in band, so you know, she's seen his recordings, and we hope that the exposure is a way that she can then see, okay, if I want to do that, I can do that. It's really hard when it's things that we don't do, and I feel that pressure all the time. Like, I'm not sporty, and I want my child to be a bit more sporty. So now I'm like, oh, I got to force myself to go and do swimming every week so that she can see me do swimming every week. Then she can maybe understand that that's something that she can do, you know. But we also have to understand that we have our limits, right? And maybe what they need is another person in their life that does those things, not ourselves. You know, like I can tell my daughter, look at your auntie, you know, Karen, who's running all the time. So she can become an inspiration from a more sporty or athletic, you know, perspective. But understanding that self-awareness, I think, to begin with, is really important. And, you know, I think you've already got there. So it's just trying to find ways that, as you said, don't put that desire on your children, but find ways that they can maybe start to think about how they want to aspire. You know, like if they want something, like if they want to do computer gaming, then find them computer gamers that they can follow. Or if they want to do, I don't know, sports or whatever, you know, but just to create opportunities for them, I think it takes off the pressure on you to, you know, to want to kind of try and create that kind of environment for them. Yeah. I hope that helps in some ways, but
thank you.
You know, as I said, it's such a pain. Like I get it, and run is a journey. Like we will never get to perfection, never ever. And I think what is really, really relaxing from or hopeful from, you know, in that perspective is that because I know there is no such thing as perfection in run, I don't have that pressure of being perfect all the time. It means I can also sit back and say, I'm not good at this. I really am not good at this, and I can learn and I can be a bit better, you know? So
you know what, that relates to your book, Yan, because there's one part where you talk about it's something about respecting disagreement. Yeah. And that really, you know, encompasses how we are when we know we have the certain shortfalls in us. Yeah. And how do you, you know, get you know, use the vibes or atmosphere around us to benefit, like you're referring to me being a little bit more sporty for your daughter, and I'm using you know, you for my son being musical, you know. So this is the co-relationship in a family, of friends, and that's the coexistence of humanity, of human. So we're not just one person in the world, you know. But coming back to you, Wen, I'm, you know, my kids are now 19, going to university. The chaos is on me, like where's my financials coming from, you know. But I think the thing is, us as a parent, we don't create extra chaos for the children. And I think that's, if love will always overcome everything. I mean, as idealistic as I am,
conquers all.
I'm always saying that, yes. Your children will always love you for what you are. Even if you scream at them for not making the bed, they will still not make the bed.
Thank you. Thank you both for your advice. Yeah.
I felt the raising children with Ren principles is also a process for nurturing ourselves. So thank you so much, Wenjing and Karen, for your input. And you both touched on a very important subject as well, like the relationships, including a parent and child, and many other relationships. That's also a very important part of the book. Of the book in this book. Sorry, I just we are kind of running out the time, but I am going to just add one more question, which can be a little bit controversial, because Yan has introduced the Confucius idea about like how to see a parent and a child relationship, and she also applies this type of a guardian-child relationship to many other relationships in our life. But this is also a major part where Confucius could be receiving criticism in our modern days, because some people may interpret that it creates a hierarchy, as in, just because you're my boss, I must follow you, I must be obedient to you, or just because you're older, then I must give you the credit or give you the respect. Is there a misunderstanding here? Yeah.
Yes and no. Well, so okay, the way I'm going to frame this is that so Confucius sees all these hierarchies in the world, and I think he sees it in a very beautiful way. His idea of the hierarchy is very pure, and what we have in this 21st century is not pure when we talk about hierarchy, because there's that notion of power that comes into play. And in terms of practicing Ren, I think we need to step away from the idea of power and look at it more as the concepts of nurture and concepts of learning. So in a parent or a guardian-child relationship, the guardian would be the one who's protecting the child and taking care of the child's welfare, nurturing the child, and creating a good environment so that the child can learn and grow in a positive way. Yeah. And when you reverse the role and you have the child's role, the child is a follower in essence, because they learn from the guardian. But what is really important in Ren is he does not abide to blind obedience. As a child, as you are learning, and I say child very loosely because I'm still a child, to my parents. And if I'm talking about book selling, Vivian's the guardian and I'm the child, and hopefully if I'm talking about writing, it's the other way around, hopefully. So let's see. But when we talk about these child-guardian relationships, as a child, you are also, your main responsibility is to learn and to create, to manage yourself so that you're independent and you begin to accept the knowledge that's being given to you and appreciate the nurturing that you've received, right? And as we go on, and as we receive more and more knowledge and we learn about stuff, what Confucius wants us to be able to do is also to understand and acknowledge when our capacity overcomes our guardians. If we become more knowledgeable than our guardians in a specific topic, it is okay, and actually it is correct for us to reach out respectfully and correct them. So if you're thinking about a boss employee, if as an employee you are sure that what you know is right and what the boss is doing is not good, as an employee, the right thing for you to do is to come out and respectfully address it. It's not to, it's not respectful if you go up to your boss and say, hey, you're stupid, right? That's not a respectful way of doing it. There are many ways that you can approach this without breaking that respect. And perhaps showing them data, research, or showing them different ways that it's done and how it's successful elsewhere can help that kind of relationship. But the idea is knowing that when you're in the child position, accept the knowledge, accept the nurturing, and then apply your own thinking, your own critical analysis, apply your own research elsewhere. And where you feel comfortable, go on with it. Where you feel that you have overcome that kind of child position, then you start to kind of come out and, you know, create your own person. And it's very, very similar to children, I would say, because, you know, when they hit the early adult ages, when they're in university and stuff, they start specializing. They will start having their own experiences. You know, I have a lot of older nephews, and they are adults. They're full-grown adults, and there's no way I would have that guardian relationship with them, other than perhaps cooking for them, or you know, providing shelter for them, or actually being there when they need help, because they know that they can reach out now. But when they, you know, when we reach a certain age, we become our own selves. And those relationships actually happen all the time, whether it's at work, or whether it's in the family, or whether it's just with friends. We're always just juggling these different roles. And I think in the West, there's a lot of misconception of hierarchy because it's placed on the organizational structure, you know, where the food chain goes upwards, or you know, that the idea that the food chain goes upwards, or that the people on top earns the most money. But in the idea of hierarchy for Confucius, it's not about the pyramid. It's more about the relationship and how you manage that relationship between each other. I hope that's clear-ish.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. And I definitely have a bit deeper understanding of Ren and how it applies to relationships now. I think we've got some questions in our chat box already. Gay Louis would like to know if he needs to have the knowledge of Chinese language in order to develop a deeper understanding into Ren.
Well,
the first step is to read Yan's book, which is written in English.
Yeah, totally. And Gay Louis, you might like to know that I'm not fully Chinese literate. So I grew up with a lot of Chinese languages around me, but I never got to the point where I could read and write Chinese literature. So taking on this project, I did go through a lot of questions, you know, on whether I'm the right person for it, et cetera, But ultimately, I'm not a Confucianist, so I do not need to read the original texts as they are. And because we're in the 21st century and book publishing is amazing, there are so many translations out there that you can go out and just explore everything that's available to you and take from them what you need to understand Confucianism. And, you know, in sort of academic form, you can check obviously what universities they're from or whether they're peer reviewed and stuff like that. But in other matters, to be honest, in terms of something that's so personal, like studying a philosophy, I would say go with your own feelings of what suits you the best. Yeah. And go to Guanghua Bookshop because they have the translations of the Analects there. And what I really love about it is that the copy that I got has the Mandarin, the Chinese writing next to the English writing. And so at any point, you know, I could just pull out dictionary, work through the translations if I wanted to, if I felt that the translations weren't clear enough. And there are many, many versions online that are free or that's just being done by students as well and stuff. And they're all super useful. And that's just the beginning. Because if you really want to go into Confucianism, there's sort of Mencius' teachings and there's a lot of his other disciple teachings, which I don't go into. I only use the Analects for Ren specifically. I hope that helps you kind of kick off your research into that.
Thank you so much, Yan. We are almost running out of time. Just wondering if anyone has any more questions.
it's so good to see everyone.
Yeah.
And if you're on social media and all that, you can just find me as Yan Ui. I'm always open for connecting and any questions and just talking about Ren. I mean, we're on this journey together, so we're gonna have all the ups and downs together.
I just wonder if my colleague Guanqun is around. Are you online, Guanqun? Well, because last, not the least, we are going to actually run a raffle session. And because Yan is going to give away a free signed copy of the Ren. And also she's going, that's for the first winner. And the second winner is going to get a free audio book of the Ren. And we're just gonna run a raffle session, but I realized I've got a small technical issue because I've got a list of the attendees, but not everyone is here. So I may have to run a few runs to get just in case I hit someone who didn't attend today.
And Vivian, I have to disqualify myself because I have already the signed copy.
Oh, okay. Okay. If
I'm going to disqualify myself.
Then we will do it again. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Let me see.
Yeah, Huanjun is there, I think. If you want to just take a screenshot, maybe. Oh, I see. Oh.
Yeah. Let me. Oh, sorry. Let me just find the. Oh dear. I hope that. Please bear with me.
Oh, we're doing it live. Great. I didn't realize.
I just realized the program has. Let me.
I did this once as well, Vivian, and I had to find gifts for people as well. So it's the same thing that I did. It's like a wheel, something like that.
Yeah. It's so cool. Like now you get so many of these softwares
That's
online.
right. Yeah. So many apps on the web.
Yeah. Let's see.
I actually still have loads of questions for Yan.
Do you?
How about I ask you one more question, and then while you answer, I'll figure out the story.
Sure, go for it. Go for
if
it.
you don't mind.
Go for it.
Yeah. So like we talked about this yesterday as well. Like in your last chapter, you talked about Ren and a wider world, and you talked about how you had suggestions of how to react to, say, social media messages that all those news that could be real or fake. But my question, I guess, is we can always use the Ren principle and just try to stay quite neutral to those messages. But if we don't do anything, how do we actually get together and actually provoke a change? Yeah. So I would like to hear your views about this.
Okay. So when I wrote that last chapter, that's actually really close to my own heart, because I work with a lot of creative people on their social media to try and help them create a more engaging platforms for promotions, for marketing, for everything that we want social media for, really. And for me, it's highly problematic if all you're doing is going into it and liking posts and sharing posts, especially when it's to do with quite important political issues or quite important social issues. And more recently, we've heard people say, oh, if you're not doing anything, you're part of the problem. If you do not participate, if you do not retweet this, it means you agree with the baddies, kind of thing. Cancel culture comes into play. And this is all actually a ploy of the social media platform itself. So the way social media is used is not normal to like a regular conversation. So if I met up with you and I said to you, hey, I'm into environmentalism, like, do you want to join me? immediately we're in a conversation and you can look at me and say, oh, it's not something I'm interested in, or, oh, sure, this is interesting. Can you send me some information, right? On social media, we don't have that connection. It's basically everyone throwing their activist perspectives at you. And it's up to you how you want to react to it. And I go back to Confucius with him saying that actions actually do speak louder than words. Retweeting what someone said or tweeting something that you think of does not create any kind of action in a regular social media platform. You know, it's just another few words that's out in the open. Whereas if you are truly trying to change something that's happening politically or socially in your area, it's a lot better to think about what Confucius says, which is go back and research, look into the topic itself, right? So if it's something to do with your local area, what's your council doing, or what's your local MP doing about it? Is it something that you can petition them to change, or even go up to them, knock on their door, because they all have office hours, and force them to listen to the issue itself? That is an action that will actually create some sort of change, rather than just talking about it. And I can tell you, like, I've had tweets that were retweeted, say, 200 times of a book. It didn't sell a single book because it's not an engaging platform. It's a bunch of people going, yeah, I like what you're saying. That's it. You know, social media itself also plays very differently in different countries, in different platforms, in different cultures, in different cities. It works well for, say, there were places that were under attack. I remember there was an example, I can't remember which country it was, where everything was shut down in terms of their physical connections with each other. They couldn't get information out correctly. And people turned to Twitter to give safety information for the local people to be able to move around. That is a good use for social media, and, you know, for a communications platform. But that applies to a really specific incident and a really specific place. For us, in our regular lives in cities like London, you know, where it's huge, just doing talking about stuff online does not mean action. And when we get coerced by all our other friends or by the people on our streams talking about specific things, we need to, I think, take a step back and look at it before we retweet, before we like, share, you know, do all that kind of stuff, and consider whether we actually truly are passionate about the issue. If we're liking and sharing, why are we doing that? Is it to just show your friend that you've read the post? Or is it you really want to share that post? And if you do really want to share that post, what is it about? Is it, I keep coming back to environmentalism because it's something that's on my mind right now. But for example, if it is that, would it not be better if I went out and got the information from organizations like UN, UNESCO, WHO, you know, or Greenpeace, where they have information that's been checked, that's been fact-checked, that's been peer-reviewed, and also sharing from them would mean that their organization gets the support that's needed and helps with the issue in the first place. You know, so how is your action helping what's happening in the sort of social media, internet world today, where everything is so cheap to talk about, but no one's actually truly taking sort of physical actions to kind of push the passion areas that that you're interested in. It's really hard to kind of generalize these issues because it's so different depending on what issue it is and what country it is, what city it is, and what incident it is. But ultimately, what Confucius wants us to think is go right back down to the information. do you have enough knowledge to know, you know, is it right, is it wrong? And what you're doing, is it going to help them or not? Is it an action that's worth doing? And if we kind of put those two things in our mind when we're acting online, I think it's enough for us to kind of, you know, get it to be a better place. Yeah. Hopefully that works.
Thank you. There's a very useful part in the book that talks about how to analyze and process these messages from social media, and I found it very beneficial. And hopefully now my drawing is ready. Just 1 second. Let me. Okay. So we are just going to do some rounds of the test drawers until we get to the right people. So we're starting now.
Hopefully the first one is the right one.
Yes, hopefully. It's Joyce Fu here. Yes, so you are the winner of the signed copy of the book. Congratulations. And also, is Jane here?
I don't see Jane.
Okay.
Unless it's logged on as someone else.
Another round, but in the second round, the first winner will not be valid. Only the second winner. So let's so Joyce Fu already won the physical copy. We will just do another round. Oh, I do apologize. It looks like it's not letting me to do the second run. Sorry, so apologies for this technical problem. So in that case, maybe I would just contact Jane, who signed up for this talk, and to give out the free audiobook. What do you think, Yan? Do you want to pick someone?
I was gonna ask who here listens to audiobooks, because it's not something that everyone does.
Yeah.
Anyone here listens to audiobooks? Oh, Wenjin does.
Oh, shall we give it to Wenjin, because she also contributed quite a lot to the talk, and I'm really grateful to her.
I'll be very happy to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining, and sorry about the technical glitch, but it's all sorted. We'll email you about the details. I will send the physical copy to your address. So thank you so much again.
Thank you for making this, Vivian. It was very nice.
Thank you everyone for coming today.
Thank you for organizing.
And thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.